Genesis. I am your servant of Yahweh, and I greet you today and welcome. I forgot to show you yesterday. This is the Esther Fair. It's a big book, and it should be big because there's so much in it that's just crying for you to read it. I've been reading it, and my father has shown me a lot of different things. We ended yesterday with verse 8, and this study is getting to be very, very deep. So bear with me, and I pray in Yahushua's name that you will learn something, and I will too. When you leave me your comments, and let me know exactly what you are thinking about this study. Today I'm going to try my best not to read so much, but there is so much here that I don't want to overlook anything. So forgive me if you see me looking down a lot, because there's a lot to go over, and you may not realize it, but once I get into it, you'll see. All right, verse 9. And Elohim said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. Okay, with all these verses, I like to point out that when you speak to someone, you say let. That's indicating that you're either giving a statement that's sort of a commandment, but I think primarily you're asking for agreement. You say, let me have this or let me have that, because you want someone to give it to you freely. You want them to agree with you in order to get it done and in order for you to get what it is that you desire. So Elohim at the beginning of these verses says let. So apparently they agreed, and these things are happening. So he said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together unto one place. Okay, now, as we mentioned before, the earth was a big mass of water. So it seemed to have already been gathered in one place. However, they took it a step further and gathered it to another place, wherever this place was. Possibly the third place from the sun, I don't know. But they gathered together in one place. And this is going to come in handy, or should I say it'll become even more relevant later on when we see it being gathered together in the book of Exodus. Nevertheless, they gathered it together in one place. After, I'm assuming, it was gathered into one place, then the dry land appeared. Okay, where did the dry land come from? Was it inside this mass of water, or did they bring it somewhere? You know, it's kind of, a lot of these things are very undefined, but nonetheless, dry land appeared, and you had dry land in one place and water in another place. They were probably occupying the same space, but they were in two places. I guess it's funny. You know, you look at the earth now, you see water around the land in the midst of the waters. You know, it's a strange way to put it. Verse 10, Elohim called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And Elohim saw that it was good. Also, I should mention that, I think I've mentioned it before, but the scriptures go back and forth with the term Elohim. So in some places, it is likely to, you probably accurate to assume that it's talking about the Most High. However, in other places, it's probably referring to other Elohim or more than one Elohim. All right. Okay, verse 10. And Elohim said, let the earth bring forth grass, and herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth, and it was so. All right. Let the earth bring plants with seeds of its kind. I said plants because it brought grass and trees and fruit. You know, these things that the earth brought seem to have existed someplace else. So how the earth brought them, We'll find that out a little bit later, and that too is going to be interesting. Nonetheless, they didn't bring any kind of plant, no grass, no tree that had seeds of something other than what it was. You know, grass only yielded grass seed. It didn't yield seed for trees or seeds for animals. You know, the grass was grass and it only had seed for itself. So keep that in mind. Verse 12. And the earth brought forth grass, and the herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the third day. While there were still no stars in the expanse to account for a light source, so what was light to account for the periods of day and night, which we now know to be a 24-hour period? We went over that before, so I'm not going to go over it again, but it's worth looking at, you know, every time I see it, because it's interesting. Verse 14, Elohim said, let there be lights, finally, in the expanse of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for appointed feasts and for days and years. All right, now we got a light source. Apparently these lights were what we looking at today as they were stars. You know, scientists using, you know, different types of advanced telescope technology, you know, they come to define some of these things as other galaxies and, you know, other, you know, red giants and blue giants and pulsars and quasars and all different types of light sources. So they named them. The scientists today have named a lot of them, although the vast majority of them, probably 99% of them, remain unnamed. But nonetheless, they appeared, and now we have a lot of light. However, they weren't local, per se. Verse 15, and let them be for lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light upon the earth, and it was so. Verse 16, Elohim made at two great lights, at the greater light to rule the day, and at the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. Well, that threw me for a loop. Did it throw you for one? Because he said he made the stars also. So what were the lights that appeared in the expanse in the previous verse? Sound like the light that they called forth before, didn't it? Interesting. I don't know. Nonetheless, now we have the sun and the moon. So now the earth has local light sources to provide light. But they didn't just make them just to make them. Verse 17, Elohim set them in the expanse of the heavens to give light upon the earth. Is this to say that even though there was light that had been called forth, that there was no light upon the earth? Or that the earth did not have its own light source, which, like I said, seems weird. Or was the light that had been called forth not efficient enough to light the earth, so that is why the two great lights were made. The two local light sources, the sun and the moon, they do more than just give light. As we know, they provide warmth, and there are other things that we're about to cover, so I don't want to go into it too much on this one verse. Verse 18, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness, the Elohim saw that it was good. At this time, darkness did not seem to take any negative connotations. Instead, like the things that were created, it seems to be good. Although light would be needed, since the kind of man to be made would naturally need light in order to see. I guess they could have made us in a way that we did need light, but they did because they made us like themselves. And apparently they need light. Verse 19, and the evening and the morning were the fourth day. So it wasn't until the third day that lights, local lights, were made for the earth. And possibly now we do have an accounting for a 24-hour period, possibly. Verse 20, and Elohim said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that has life, and fowl that may fly above the earth, and the open expanse of heaven. Verse 21. And Elohim created eth great sea monsters and eth every living creature that moves, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and eth every winged fowl after his kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. So we're seeing the order here that Elohim created everything only to reproduce after his kind. There are no birds reproducing and they're coming up with fish. There are no butterflies reproducing and you got a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Everything reproduces after his kind and his kind only. They don't evolve into something else. They stay their kind. All right. Verse 22. And Elohim blessed them, saying, Be fruitful and multiply and fill the waters and the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth. Well, we know that happened, don't we? Because there are lots of them everywhere. Verse 23. That's lots of everything, except for the things that are extinct now. I guess there were a lot of them at one time too, right? Verse 23. And the evening and the morning were the fifth day. And Elohim said, verse 24, Let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing, and beasts of the earth after his kind, and it was so. I would understand this if this read that the creatures would reproduce after his kind. But this says that the earth brought forth the living creature after his kind. Is that to say that these living creatures has kind like them someplace else other than the earth? It seems as though Elohim did not create them, but that they had already been created elsewhere or existed elsewhere, and they were now being called forth to cohabitate on the earth. It seemed like a lot of the things that were called forth existed someplace else and being reproduced or recreated here on earth. Because it said, let the earth bring forth the plants. It said, let the animals, let us create these animals, or make the animals after his kind. Well, in order for them to make them after his kind, they had to have a kind in the first place. So, they had to agree on these things, and then they made it so. How they agreed, or should I say what they agreed on, whether they made it new here on earth or brought it from someplace else, perhaps where they come from, is not something that's been defined here in Scripture. Nonetheless, they did agree because it happened. Verse 25. And Elohim made eth the beasts of the earth after his kind, and eth cattle after their kind, and eth everything that creeps upon the earth after his kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. Notice the pattern that when Elohim does something, it is good. Everything that they did, they said, is good. It's not that it was good, it is good. So keep that in mind. There are no bad animals. There are no bad birds, no bad fish, no bad insects, nothing. Everything that Elohim made is good. With that, we're going to wrap it up, and we're going to start with verse 26, which is one of my very, very favorite verses in all of Scripture. And there's going to be a lot to discuss about verse 26. So I'll see you next time in Yahweh's name.